Warm greetings to you all. Research Culture Society is a government-registered scientific research organization. Society is working for research community at the national and international level to impart quality and non-profitable services. Our members are scholarly educationists from various universities and institutes of repute. Here the faculties, research scholars and students interested in the area of research are given guidance and support in how their work can contribute to the betterment of our present and future generations. Research Culture Society is conducting conferences, seminars, symposiums, workshops, training and development programs on different themes. Society has organized nearly around 40 conferences, seminars, symposiums successfully at national and international level in association with different educational institutions and published selected research papers as journal special issues and book proceedings. Society is running international level referred, peer-reviewed journals with ISSN and books publication with ISBN. Educational institutions, colleges, universities are being welcomed for memorandum of understanding and collaboration to organize events. Society is promoting and sponsoring educational events as well as publishing research work in collaboration. Society also offers membership. The journals associated with Research Culture Society referred, indexed and with high impact factor. Society journals are publishing research papers, articles in all fields and subjects related to sciences, health sciences, engineering, agriculture, commerce, management, social sciences, arts, humanities, law and life skills. Research Culture Society also publishes book in both print and online with ISBN. It will also be a co-sponsor for organizing conferences and seminars. Research Culture Society also provides print and online book publications with ISBN. Society invites book study subjects and categories, thesis converted into book and conference. Human resource development, career development, general knowledge improvement, environmental issues and improvement etc. in different institutions, colleges and schools. We organize awards in different categories, RCS Awards, SRA Awards. For free. Thank you all.
All, myself Dr. M. Nagalakshmi, welcome you all for this wonderful 5-day lecture program. Today, fourth session of electronic literature. So before we move on to that session, I just want to read the disclaimer note. The pictorial, visual, audio, video material used here are taken from various websites purely for academic and research purposes of this program. There has been no intention of economic benefit out of it or to harm anyone or any community. There can be pictures, videos, slogans that may contain odd language or ideological publications. The participants are considered adult and academically open-minded for such realistic presentation. The views and opinions expressed in the program presentation are those of the authors, speakers, and do not represent the perspectives of any organization, organizer, or organizer. Society is not responsible in any case. After all, the material comes from real sources which are useful for the academic and knowledge sharing purposes only. Thank you. Happy learning to all of us. Okay. So as we have seen for the past 3 days, like definitions and characteristics of electronic literature and genres of electronic literature, e-poetry, in that series, today you will engage yourself into another genre. Before that, I just want to tell you a few words about this rebooting electronic literature. What does it mean? Let's see. What do you call it when you make a work that has not been readily available to the public for over a decade, accessible, and promote that work via social media, networks, and open access publishing efforts? The phrase ALO came up with its rebooting, as in restarting. Makes perfect sense since the media we are working with is born digital, computational, literary works, or ALIT, as we call it. Let's see, what is it?
Traversal is a process by which a user, performer, author performs a work of electronic literature on the original hardware and with the original software for which the work was produced. It's intended to capture the cultural context of a work, and that includes everything from sounds to glitches to the look and feel of the interface to the way we interact with the keyboard and those kinds of physical material processes.
Structure first.
Yes.
We
yes,
have to
yes.
structure
equals
first,
meaning.
because you have to understand where your words are going to go.
Yes.
You can't just throw your words on a page.
Is it okay now? Are you able to see this PPT?
I have to ask.
Okay. So, the ALO is reviving interest in elite works published from 1986 to 1997, predominantly pre-verb hypertext. They have titled the book Rebooting Electronic Literature, documenting pre-verb born digital media. They have rebooted many volumes of DL. This is just an information regarding the world of electronic literature people to their readers or users. Okay, today let's delve into another prominent genre of electronic literature. Even in print literature, this genre is a major one, especially after globalization. Yes, hope you'd have guessed what I'm talking about, fiction. It is a major genre after the expansion of post-colonial studies. This is the major and much developed genre in print literature too. Here, in electronic literature, this is very interesting an enlightening genre. There are different types of fiction as we see in print literature, similarly in electronic literature too. We can see the various types of fiction in electronic literature. From the day one, the one thing I keep on repeating and emphasizing is all the tribes or types have individual qualities, but all are interconnected. Keeping this point in our mind, let us see the various kinds of fiction. So, this is what we have seen that rebooting electronic literature. Let's see the various types of fiction. The first one on the series, interactive fiction. For the first time, you are more than a passive reader. You can talk to the story in full English sentences, and the story talks right back, communicating entirely in vividly descriptive prose. What's more, you can actually shape the story's course of events through your choice of action. And you have hundreds of alternatives at every step. Yes. What is interactive fiction? The Beginner's Guide to Playing Interactive Fiction defines interactive fiction as both a computer game and book, or rather something in between. What is a type of electronic literature that is similar to a computer game because the player takes on the role of the main character and must use text commands to control the game and the characters. Examples of text commands are listen or take it. This is where the interactive element plays a major role because the player has to tell the main character what to do in order to solve the puzzles in the game. Each time the player solves the puzzle, they are able to find out more information. And the story will eventually begin to create meaning. Interactive fiction is similar to a book because all the different puzzles that need to be solved in the game are similar to chapters in a book which tell a story. It is different and unique compared to other kinds of fictions because the player determines how the plot of the game will unfold based on how well that they play the game. It is very easy to flip through the pages of a book and find out what happens in the end. But in interactive fiction, it poses a challenge for its players and requires its players to solve the puzzles to get to the end. So this is an example, and you can see here on one side they have given a number of words. Actually, those are set of words you can use when you read interactive fiction. We cannot, put a line for interactive fiction, hypermedia fiction, hypertext fiction, multimedia fiction, video games. There are certain qualities each one possesses, but you cannot put a boundary line. So here When you read interactive fiction, there are certain things you have to understand, that if the plot is like a game and you are the player and you have to give command, right? So these are the words we can use to move further. So how to play interactive fiction? You just read it again. How to play instead of how to read, right? The first part of this tutorial is loosely adapted from a beginner's guide to playing interactive fiction. Well-known interactive fiction author Emily Short has written a downloadable PDF tutorial. So if you want to read or if you want to play interactive fiction, you have to understand the basic rules. The basic rules you can get as a PDF file, as like a tutorial, a beginner's guide to playing interactive fiction, written by Emily Short. At Brass Lantern, you'll find a whole set of beginners' resources. Also worth checking out the introductory material written by Dennis Juss, especially the links under playing interactive fiction. The story begins. In interactive fiction, you play the role of a character in a story. The story may be whimsical, in which case it will more obviously qualify as a game, or more serious. It may have well-developed characters and something resembling a plot, or it may be a little more than a setting where you can wander around and pick up treasures. In order to move the story forward, you will type commands that cause your character to do things. The interpreter's software will describe what the fictional world looks like. If your action causes a change in the world of the story, the software will usually tell you. Note the word usually. On occasion, an action you take in one place, you may have effects in another place. Which you won't be told about unless you go to the other place and look for them. When you load a story into your interpreter's software, you will see an introduction. Usually the introduction consists of one or two screens full of text, which will give you some background on who and where you are. In some games, you will learn from the introduction what you are trying to accomplish during the story, but in others, you may have to figure out as you go along. Whenever the software has printed a screen full of text, it will wait until you press the key before continuing. This will give you a chance to read everything before the text scrolls off the top of the screen. So this is a picture from an interactive fiction concerning puzzles. To read a book, all you need to do is turn the pages. The author has pre-arranged the events of the story for you, and they almost always unfold in a simple linear order from start to finish. But in interactive fiction, it is quite different. In order to move the story forward, you will have to figure out what to do next within the world of the story. If it were always obvious what you need to do next, then the story wouldn't be very interactive, isn't it? It would unfold in a linear manner, perhaps prompting you from time to time for input that would amount to little more than turning the pages. Instead, most interactive fiction presents you at any given moment with a number of choices that may or may not move the story forward. Finding the right action to take at a given point in the story is not always easy. Right? You have to understand this one. Finding the right action to take at a given point in the story is not always easy, especially in interactive fiction and solving the puzzles. Sometimes it's quite difficult indeed. Its purpose. The author can be expected to put roadblocks in your path, sometimes small, some large. These roadblocks and blind alleys are also known as puzzles. This is also a picture from the interactive fiction, like solving the puzzle. Sometimes the solution to a puzzle will become clear if you examine nearby objects closely. Quite often, a seemingly useless object found in one location will become useful in a different location entirely. On occasion, you may need to find unlikely uses for objects or try unlikely actions. Lateral thinking will often be useful. How to interact? After the interaction is printed, you will get a prompt. The prompt means that the software is waiting for you to tell it what you want to do. You do this by typing commands, as if you are giving orders to the character whose part you are playing. After typing a command, press the computer's enter or return key. For instance, the introduction might tell you that you are in a kitchen, and that you can see a closed glass jar standing on the kitchen counter. Commands you could try at this point would include: take the jar, open the jar, and examine the jar. If you want to, you can skip the articles take jar instead of take the jar. That will work as well as take the jar. If there are several different jars you could be referring to, the software will probably ask you which one you mean. If you are asked a question, you can usually respond by typing one or more words that uniquely identifies the specific item you want your command to be directed to. For instance, if the software says, which jar do you mean? The blue glass jar or the green glass jar? You could reply blue to take or examine or open, whatever it is. The blue one. You can also choose to ignore the question altogether, just typing a new command. If you are new to interactive fiction, the fact that you can type commands and have the computer respond to them may mislead you into thinking that the software is far more intelligent than actually the case. Truth be told, the software's parser, the routine that interprets what you type, is not nearly as smart as a 3-year-old child. It will respond to commands in only a few simple forms. That is verb, verb noun, verb preposition noun, verb noun preposition noun, or person verb noun. So you have to remember that when you are reading or playing an interactive fiction, the commands just simply verb enough. You can move on. The last of the forms, that is person verb noun, is used when you want to give a command to a different character who is in the room with you. That is, in that fiction world I'm talking about. The point is, commands like, what do I do now? And commands that begin with words like please won't work at all in interactive fiction. In order to help the parser understand what you want to do, you need to be as specific and detailed as possible. Let's say you have encountered a broken pocket watch in the course of the game. Typing repair the watch is very unlikely to work. Instead, what you have to do, you would need to examine watch to learn perhaps that its back can be pried open. Depending on how the particular object has been defined, you might need to examine back of watch or turn watch over to see the back. That's a difficult, pretty puzzle. Most of the puzzles you will encounter in if, a short abbreviation of interactive fiction, are not quite that complicated. The point is, learning to think in this step-by-step fashion is essential to playing interactive fiction. Why am I saying a detailed thing about this command? Even we understand all those things without saying. But when you enter into this interactive fiction world, it's very difficult for us to communicate, to go further, because we are trained to ask questions in a complete sentences. But here, it's just a single word. Just a verb can work, right? So there are certain set of words, set of verbs usually work for this interactive fiction. The major usage of the verb use is completely avoided in interactive fiction, because If you say that word, it's very easy. And they don't want that easy, right? So movement. In most interactive fiction, you are free to wander around an environment that contains a number of discrete locations. To move from where you are now to another location, all you need to do is type the direction you want to go. Other methods of navigating from place to place have been tried, but the least obtrusive method is to use compass directions to indicate the direction of movement. For instance, you can type go south, but simply typing south will also do the trick, because as I said here, it's not necessary to type a complete sentence. You can just type the verb. For some occasions, even a noun can work. Okay, so you can type go south, or just simply typing south will also do the trick, as will the abbreviation yes sometimes. Yes, N, W, and then E for representing, directions. For northeast, in similar way, NE, and so on. If you are outside of a location, typing in or enter will often allow you to enter it. If you are in an interior location that has one obvious exit, typing out or exit will usually take you out. If you are sitting in a chair or lying on a bed, the command stand up, which can be entered simply as stand, also will work. In specific situations, you might also be able to use movement words like climb or scroll. Okay, so in most locations, these commands would have no meaning. In some interactive fiction, they are not needed at all. You will probably find it helpful to draw a map of the area in which you find yourself. You may also want to make notes on the map about which objects or people are found in which places. So there are certain common verbs, commands. As I said earlier, the most common verb, take knife, take stick, and the other one is get. You can say get as a synonym for take. In most cases, the object that you are wanting to manipulate needs to be physically present. If your character is in the dining room and the jar of honey is in the pantry, typing get jar of honey won't do anything. Many games include a few special commands of their own. Hopefully, you'll be able to think of the right command when you need it. If you have tried several ways of giving a command and the software refuses to understand what you want to do, you are most probably on the wrong track. It's time to try something completely different. Either the game is just badly written. So the interpreter software for interactive fiction tried to present a natural language interface to the reader, user, player, but its ability to understand your command very limited, as we noted earlier, right? So you will need to type commands that say specifically what actions you want to take. The all-purpose verb use is not understood by most interactive fiction software, and for a very good reason. It makes the game too easy. Interacting with people. While exploring the world of the game, you may meet other people. Modeling the complexities of real human interactions is for better or worse beyond the capabilities of even the most advanced computer software. When interacting with the characters in interactive fiction, you'll be limited to a small number of words. Several systems are in common use. Some include conversation menus. Another common approach is the ask and tell system. When this is implemented by the game designer, you can ask a character about a subject of your own choosing, or tell the character about something. To do this, you will almost always need to specify the subject with a single noun. For instance, ask John about Mary would likely be understood by the software if there were characters named John and Mary in the game, but ask John why Mary won't give me the pitcher of milk would not be understood. If you think John might know something about this, your choices will almost certainly be limited to ask John about Mary and ask John about milk. Instead of asking, you can tell a character about something. Sometimes the result will be the same whether you ask or tell. Sometimes there will be a difference. So you can see the special commands. Most games include some verbs that don't do anything in the world of the story, but instead tell the software something about how you want it to behave, or some special task you want it to perform. So you have to remember that whatever the command you are giving, that is how the character wants to act. That is what the command don't do anything in the world of the story, right? So it tells the software something about how you want it to behave, or some special task you want it to perform. These verbs include, so there are certain verbs we know when we use the software, and when we use, any kind of software, there are certain things we know as we are using computer for many purposes. So undo, quit, restart, and most of us, at least not like digital natives, we play certain video games, right? So these are the special commands you should know when you are reading or playing an interactive fiction. You can see here first draft of the revolution. Are you able to see the screen, sir?
Yes.
Okay. So the writer, as I suggested here, you can get the PDF of the words how to play interactive fiction. So here you can go begin. You can see if you want to play as a interactive fiction, you can start with begin. Or if you want to know how to play, you can go as a video. I'll just show here this one, right? So here you can read the story here from page by page, next page, because here just for reading, your action starts in another place. Okay, here also you have to read the story and then go to the next page. Here the action actually begins. Actually, it works here. Okay, let me go to the video. So here it's giving time for reading. About the weather. Wherever you see the bold sentences. You can rewrite those sentences. When you click that, it glows actually. So you will get, note. So when the letter is finished, it will show that send the letter. This is what I tried to do, but I don't know. It doesn't work out today. Hypertext fiction. So hypertext fiction is a genre of electronic literature characterized by the use of hypertext links, which provides a new context for non-linearity in literature and reader interaction. The reader typically chooses links to move from one node of text to the next. And in this fashion, arranges a story from a deeper pool of potential stories. The split can also be seen in interactive fiction, as we have seen now. The term can also be used to describe traditionally published books. What I am talking about here, print books, in which a non-linear and interactive narrative is achieved through internal references. Right? Vladimir Nabokov's Pale Fire, published in 1962, and Julia Cortázar's Reula, 1963, translated as hopscotch, are early examples predating the word hypertext. Predating the word hypertext. So, these books, which I mentioned here, are print books published in 1970s. While a common pop culture example is a choose your own adventure format of young adult fiction. The first hypertext fictions were published. Those are the books I mentioned here, right? The first hypertext fictions were published prior to the development of the World Wide Web, WWW. using software such as Story Space and HyperCard. That is what the first famous electronic literature book is, Michael Joyce's Afternoon a Story. In the previous classes I showed, that book you have to buy from Eastgate. It's not available in that ELO volumes, right? You can buy it. That book actually written before this World Wide Web, right? So Michael Joyce's Afternoon a Story, first presented in 1987 and published by Eastgate Systems in 1991, is generally considered one of the first hypertext fictions. So after Afternoon, many more. Afternoon was followed by a series of other story space hypertext fictions from Eastgate Systems, including Stuart Malthrope's Victory Garden. Its name was Penelope by Judy Malley, and Coraline Quibbling, Shelley Jackson, Patchwork Girl are very famous. Here in the Afternoon, Michael Joyce's Afternoon a Story and Shelley Jackson, Patchwork Girl were most famous. So when you browse, you will find these two books' names very frequently in the world of digital literature. Judy Malley's Love One, created in 1994, was the first selection in the Eastgate Web Workshop. Douglas Cooper's Delirium, 1994, was the first novel serialized on the World Wide Web. It permitted navigation between 4 parallel story strands. Some other web examples of hypertext fiction include Stuart Malthrope's Hegeroscope, the one which I showed here as an example. I'll take you that. I'll take you all to that place. Sunshine 69, The Unknown, the other one which I have given here. The Company Therapist. The Unknown actually won the award, TRA's award, in 1998. And Caitlin Fisher's These Waves of Girls, 2001, which won the ELO award for fiction in 2001. You can see that so here itself we can see that it's hypertext fiction. So when you go this one, you can see here the introduction, index, so wherever you see the hypertext word, if you click, it will take you to the another place. I'm just clicking, I'm not reading. Hope you will understand. So this is the way you can read the story in such a way, all right? The other one, unknown. Similar way, you can see here, hypertext. Click that. Take you to the another page. Okay, so similar way, you can read the fiction. It's multimedia and narrative games. Video games have become a new form of literature without much fanfare. People still refer to the 1970s and 80s as the glory days of interactive fiction, time when computers were giving choose your own adventure stories a new lease of life. But technology has come a long way since then. And so too has our ability to capture the hallmarks of good literature in digital forms. The reason is that these games are all about story and about the vital role of plays in the act of storytelling. Creators of digital fiction are using rich virtual worlds to make their stories engaging. We all know when we have come upon a good story, because we want to stay in it, we want to know how it ends, we want to go over it again to be sure that we haven't missed something the first time around, because there is pleasure knowing and unknowing. A feeling that there might be more story to be revealed, hidden somewhere in the game world. This is the multimedia fiction joining the dots actually. So you have to have Adobe Flash to read this one. Other two, it works. It says it should be played
Join
by...
the dots. Join the dots together. Make pictures in the sky. Connect the muddle of our thinking to these drawings in the sky. This story is
Actually,
about
I
a
have
man
taken
named
this as a
Wittgenstein.
video font.
He was a philosopher.
You can play
His life
on
was
your
a
own.
series of moments, and our story is a series of constellations. Join the dots.
You can see here now, right? Oh, I have taken this as story. You have to wait till, 100%.
Familiar with the story behind the rebel?
No, and I don't really.
Written for an Austrian concert pianist named Paul Wittgenstein. He lost his right arm during First World War. He embarked on a long search to commission piano works for the left hand alone. Composer after composer turned him down, but he refused to give up. Finally, he found Ravel, who, like him, was willing to accept this great challenge.
As you know, multimedia, it has everything: text, image, audio, video, everything. So here, if you click here, you will get another screen.
Aphasia is the inability to comprehend or express linguistic symbols we use to communicate. It is usually related to brain injuries or disease in the parasylvian areas of the left hemisphere of the brain. By studying aphasia, we have come to understand how the mind's division of labor works. Language is concentrated mostly in the left hemisphere of the brain, whereas musical ability and appreciation is a right-sided activity. We are cloven between language and music. The asymmetry of brain function is an evolutionary inheritance from our transition to verticality. As our hands were freed from the tasks of climbing and walking, they began to grasp the abstract nature of the world, a function that would transform our brain and give us the ability to recreate the world with language.
Okay, so similar way, when you click here, it will choose language.
We were in a cafe, drinking coffee together and talking about philosophy, and I said, Wittgenstein said the limits of language are the limits of my world. And she said, Derrida said there is nothing outside of the text. And I said, the end of language is the beginning of existence. And she said, isn't that just another concept? And I said, does existence exist before we existed? And she said, no. Then there was a pause. The cream in my hand was poised over the dark void of my coffee. And then I said, did you see that Godard film, the one with the coffee cup? And she said, yes, where we see the milk folding into the dark expanse of his coffee cup, and in that cup of coffee there is a whole universe of meaning. What does he say? The limits of language are the limits of my world. And by speaking, I limit the world. That's Wittgenstein. Yes. Wittgenstein also said, our words will only express facts. As a teacup will hold a teacup full of water even if I were to pour out a gallon over it. And then she laughed. She laughed out loud and she said, laughter is the limits of language. We laugh when the absurdity of language becomes apparent, when it tricks us into believing in a thing called meaning. And I said, we never arrive at fundamental propositions in the course of our investigations. We only get to the boundary of language that stops us from asking further questions.
Right?
We were in a cafe, drinking coffee together and talking about philosophy, and I said,
Similar way, we can, move the story. We can read the story. We can listen to the story the way we like, because we are the one choose which part of story we want to hear. That is multimedia fiction. This is the video games. So video games are inherently mixed media, are ideal for such expressive mashups. A storyteller can describe a world with words, but they could also show you that world with computer graphics, allow you to build in your own mind's eye. Or traverse it with a mouse and keyboard. Sorry. Another one. We have seen the interactive fiction, hypertext fiction, multimedia fiction, and here the video games. I tried to play this game. Also, this needs Adobe Flash. So here, this is the game. So you will get the instructions here. To move, you have to use your left and right arrow keys. To jump, use the space bar. So this is the way. So let's start. You have to start from here. I know that I cannot move 2-3 levels. So here, to move this one, you have to use the arrow key. So here you can see it goes to the next level. I played earlier, so I know that if I go to the right side, death. So I have to go to the left side. So if you find this one, you can click, you will get a video here.
There's Walter again, there's Mom. There's Walter again, there's Mom. Yeah, there's Walter again, there's Mom.
You are here. You have to jump.
Come on and meet your maker. Come on and meet your maker.
So this is the way you have to play. I know that I cannot move further. I tried many times, right? Okay, so in similar way, you have many more games. In this collections volume 2, you have 2-3 games, and volume 3 and volume 1 also you have games, right? Game, also you will have the story in it. Now, the very important thing here, the shared authorship. One of the many defining characteristics of postmodernism is the idea of shared authorship. In its most basic sense, shared authorship is the notion that a work of literature is created by multiple parties. The author or designer, perhaps a more accurate description, because we cannot say that author alone, designer. And the reader. The author puts together a framework, but the reader moves through the framework as he or she wishes, thus creating a unique experience for each different reader. Interactive fiction exemplifies this paradigm. The author has built a framework, a world in which the meta-narratives exist. The reader tells the author what to do in reality. The user interacts with the parser. However, the computer can be easily thought of as the author himself responding to the reader. Thus, each reader has a unique experience as the narrative is choice-driven. To be clear, this idea of shared authorship is much more than simple differences in order of interaction. It is not simply that reader 1 follows path A to the end and the reader 2 follows path B to the end. What makes shared authorship so powerful is that path A and path B are entirely different experiences. Readers are presented with so many choices that have consequences within the narrative, that each has a completely unique experience. Right? That is what shared authorship. Okay, now, what do the critics say about this? Say about the total. Scholars of digital fiction. So here I have given for that that interactive fiction and games and stories together. Critics' view. Scholars of digital fiction have long been fascinated by this idea. The reality that interaction makes the player feel like an active participant in the narrative's progression. When they are in truth still an observer, bound by predetermined authorial structures as they might be in print. The difference, of course, that sense of active participation, of narrative exploration, which however falls, is extremely compelling. What is interesting about the use of video games to tell stories is that we are constantly being told that literature is suffering in this current age of screens. Such arguments tend to construct a tension between print and screen-based storytelling. But language is just one form of expression. And while it is a hugely powerful instrument, when wielded on its own, there is also much that can be achieved by combining it with other modes, as we have long seen with film and other multimedia storytelling, right? It is easy to argue that compared to mixed media storytelling, the use of language alone can be more liberating to readers. The worlds we imagine are limited only by ourselves when we read the print literature. Whereas video games, despite illusions otherwise, are mathematically confined. The worlds we inhabit in games are, while seemingly vast, surrounded by hard-coded even horizons, points which the player just cannot pass, as I have struggled in the last game, right? I have played many times, but couldn't reach the next level. But good stories are not defined by either capacity to be infinite, but the extent to which they make us feel something, whatever their aesthetic confines. Of course, not all video games are concerned with story, right? In fact, Ian Burgess, a critic, one of the stars of game studies, thinks they are better without stories. Some are still all about play, about doing, about space without narrative. Astrid Enslin, who wrote the book on this topic, Literary Gaming, talks about a literary ludic spectrum with games that privilege play being on one end and games that privilege story on the other. Considering video games, interactive fiction, multimedia, and hypertext fiction are the cultural form of the day, there is plenty of room for everything, gaming as well as narration. With this note, I end this session, and for assignment, you can prepare assignment based on your observation. The research article should include, not limited to, the characteristics of electronic literature, various genres of electronic literature, that is e-poetry, interactive fiction, hypertext fiction, hypertext poetry, video games, multimedia fiction, multimedia poetry, generative poetry, and many more. And the evolution of digital age, the differences between digital and print poetry. Even you can write the differences between e-poetry and fiction, interactive fiction. You can select any one variety of poetry and in which way When you see that interactive poetry and interactive fiction, right? The influence of electronic literature to print literature and the possible ways to include electronic literature into our syllabi. The various methods to teach this electronic literature, also the various methods to read this electronic literature, and then the technologies, the techniques, the software which are needed for this electronic literature. Then you can write anticipated problems of teaching this electronic literature or this digital natives and so on. So I have given here hypertext fiction and other okay, I have given here all the other excuse me. Hello. Hello.